My name is Elena Cruz. I'm 29 years old, and the day my stepmother smiled while handing me eviction papers was the day I stopped being the good girl. If you've ever been told to be patient while someone steals your life piece by piece, you'll understand this. My father built Cruz custom homes from nothing, brick by brick, contract by contract. I grew up walking construction sites in pink sneakers, holding blueprints bigger than my arms. He used to say, "One day, this will all be yours, mija." But he died suddenly. Heart attack. No warning. And grief makes you blind. At the funeral, my stepmother Vivian cried the loudest. Designer black dress, perfect mascara streaks. She held my hand like we were united in tragedy. We weren't. 2 weeks later, she called me into my father's office. His chair was gone. His photos were gone. Even the cologne smell was gone. She sat behind the desk like she'd always belonged there. "Elena," she said gently, sliding an envelope toward me. "Your father updated the will last year." I didn't feel fear. Not yet. I opened it. The house? Left to Vivian. The company? Transferred to a trust, controlled by Vivian. My inheritance? A modest payout, contingent on me not contesting anything legally. There it was, the trap. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed. "Your father worried you weren't experienced enough to run things." Not experienced enough? I had a business degree. I'd been managing project budgets for 3 years. I knew the company inside out. But grief makes you doubt yourself. So I moved out quietly. Small apartment, fewer clothes, no more family dinners. And then the rumors started. Apparently, I had chosen not to be involved in the company. Apparently, I wasn't ready. Apparently, I wanted independence. Vivian was rewriting history, and I almost let her. Until the day one of our longtime contractors called me. "Hey kid," he said hesitantly. "You know your dad never signed off on selling the Riverside property, right?" My stomach dropped. "Selling?" "Yeah, closed last week. Price was low. Very low." I drove past the Riverside site that night. It was already being demolished. My father had held that land for 10 years, waiting for the market peak. Vivian sold it within a month. Below value. That wasn't grief. That was liquidation. That's when it clicked. She wasn't protecting the company. She was draining it. And suddenly, I wasn't grieving anymore. I was awake. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. Instead, I requested copies of every public filing, every land transfer, every corporate amendment. What Vivian didn't know? My name was still listed as minority shareholder in early formation documents. Dad had done that when I turned 21. Small percentage, but enough. Enough to request financial transparency. Enough to make things uncomfortable. So I hired a forensic accountant, quietly. And what we found? Inflated executive consulting fees paid to a shell LLC. That LLC registered to Vivian's brother. Money wasn't just being moved, it was being siphoned. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at spreadsheets. My father's company was bleeding, and the woman who cried the loudest at his funeral was holding the knife. Here's what Vivian didn't realize about me. I learned business at kitchen tables. I learned patience on construction sites. And I learned survival from watching my father negotiate with sharks. So I did something she'd never expect. I started my own company. Not in custom homes, in commercial development consulting. And I started calling my father's old clients. Not to gossip, not to accuse, just to offer better terms, transparent contracts, lower overhead, clear ethics. Within 3 months, I secured 2 mid-sized contracts. Within 6 months, one of Vivian's largest partners quietly switched to me. She noticed. Oh, she noticed. She called me for the first time in months. "Elena," she said sharply, "are you trying to compete with your own family?" I smiled into the phone. "No," I said calmly. "I'm just building." Her voice hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I replied softly. "You did. Because while she was busy draining what my father built, I was becoming the thing she feared most: competent. And the real war? It hadn't even started yet. Because next week, there's a shareholder meeting. And thanks to one very specific clause my father buried in the original bylaws, Vivian might not be as untouchable as she thinks. And this is the part where my stepmother realized she wasn't the only one who could play with paperwork. The shareholder meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Monday. Vivian chose a luxury conference room downtown instead of my father's old office. Neutral territory, controlled environment. She thought optics would protect her. When I walked in, every executive turned to look at me. Some awkward, some relieved, some nervous. Vivian didn't stand to greet me. "Elena," she said coolly, "I didn't expect you to attend." I pulled out the chair directly across from her. "As a minority shareholder," I replied calmly, "I have the legal right." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The meeting began with numbers: projected revenue, asset liquidation updates, strategic downsizing. Strategic, that word again. When she finished her presentation, she folded her hands. "Any questions?" I raised mine. "Yes," I said clearly. "Can you explain the consulting fees paid to Vantage Urban Holdings over the last 6 months?" The room shifted. Vivian didn't blink. "Operational advisement." "Interesting," I said, "because Vantage Urban Holdings is registered to your brother, who has no development license." Silence. You could hear the air conditioning hum. Her jaw tightened. "Be careful, Elena." "I am," I said. "That's why I brought documentation." I slid copies of the forensic audit across the table. Bank transfers, registration records, wire confirmations. One of the senior board members picked up the papers slowly. "You didn't disclose this relationship," he said quietly to Vivian. "It was temporary support," she snapped. "The company needed flexibility." "At below-market property sales?" I asked gently. "Including Riverside?" Now everyone was looking at her. And here's the thing about truth. It doesn't need volume. It just needs evidence. Vivian's composure cracked slightly. "You're emotional," she said, turning it on me. "Your father's death has clouded your judgment." I leaned forward. "No, your greed did." The room froze. I let the silence stretch. Then I delivered the clause. "Section 8.4 of the original bylaws," I said evenly. "In the event of financial misconduct or breach of fiduciary duty, minority shareholders may motion for a temporary suspension of trustee control pending investigation." One board member blinked. "That clause was never removed?" "No," I replied. "My father wrote it himself." Vivian went pale. "You wouldn't dare." I looked directly at her. "Watch me." I formally submitted the motion. And here's what Vivian forgot. She may have controlled the trust, but she didn't control the board. 3 members voted to open an investigation. 2 abstained. And just like that, her authority was suspended pending review. Not permanent, not dramatic, just paused. But power hates being paused. As we stood to leave, Vivian grabbed my arm. "You think you've won?" she hissed quietly. I gently removed her hand. "No," I said softly. "I think Dad saw this coming." Her eyes flickered, because that was the real fear, that maybe he hadn't trusted her as completely as she thought. The investigation began immediately, and it moved fast. Wire transfers flagged, undisclosed relationships confirmed, asset undervaluation documented. By Friday, the board called an emergency session. Vivian didn't show up. Her lawyer did. That told me everything. Meanwhile, my own company? It was thriving. Clients appreciated transparency. Banks liked my conservative projections. And former Cruise employees quietly began sending me resumes. Not because I asked, because they trusted me. And then the final blow came. one of the undervalued properties Vivian had sold. The buyer agreed to testify that she had rushed the deal and discouraged competitive bids. That wasn't poor judgment. That was intent. When the board reconvened, the decision was unanimous. Vivian was permanently removed as trustee. A civil case would follow. And control of the trust? Transferred temporarily to an external fiduciary, with me appointed as operational advisor. Not owner, not heir, advisor. But this time, on record. When I left that building, my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "You've destroyed this family." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "No, I protected what you tried to steal." She never responded. 2 months later, Cruz Custom Homes stabilized. Not flashy, not reckless, steady. Employees returned. Clients regained confidence. And me? I finally walked back into my father's old office. His desk was there again, his photos back on the wall. I sat in his chair, not because it was mine, but because I earned it. Here's what people don't understand about revenge. It's not always about burning everything down. Sometimes, it's about rebuilding it better than the person who tried to ruin it. And Vivian? She underestimated one thing. I may have been grieving, but I was never weak. And the next move? It's not about removing her. It's about ensuring she can never touch what my father built again. And this is the part where the rebuilding became permanent. After Vivian was removed as trustee, the company felt fragile, like a house standing after a storm, structure intact but cracks everywhere. Employees were cautious. Clients were waiting. The board was watching me closely. I wasn't CEO, not yet. I was operational advisor, a title that sounded temporary. But temporary power can still be powerful, if you use it right. The civil investigation against Vivian moved forward quietly. The forensic audit confirmed everything: undisclosed transfers, conflict of interest, manipulated property sales. Her brother's LLC dissolved within weeks. But here's something I didn't expect. Vivian didn't fight loudly. She negotiated. Through her attorney, she offered to step away permanently in exchange for avoiding a prolonged public court battle. The board wanted closure. The company needed stability. So I made one condition. If she walked away quietly, she would relinquish any future claim to trust control, return a negotiated portion of misallocated funds, sign a non-disparagement agreement preventing her from publicly damaging the company's reputation. No drama, no courtroom spectacle, just clean separation. She signed. The day the agreement finalized, I walked into the office and felt something lift. For the first time since my father's funeral, I could breathe without suspicion. But revenge was never my end goal. Restoration was. Over the next 6 months, I worked like my last name depended on it. Because it did. We reacquired 2 undervalued properties through strategic partnerships. We rebuilt investor confidence with conservative projections. We implemented transparent financial oversight, external audits every quarter. And something unexpected happened. The board called a vote. Not about Vivian, about leadership. One by one, they spoke. Elena understands the foundation of this company. She's already stabilizing revenue. Employees trust her. Then came the motion. Appoint Elena Cruz as permanent CEO of Cruz Custom Homes. Unanimous. I didn't cry. Not in that room. But later, alone in my father's office, I placed my hand on his desk and let the silence settle. This wasn't handed to me. It was almost stolen from me. And I took it back. A month later, we held a small groundbreaking ceremony for a new residential development, the largest project since my father passed. Reporters showed up. Local investors attended. When I stepped up to speak, the microphone felt heavier than I expected. My father built this company on integrity, I said. And we're going to honor that, brick by brick. No mention of Vivian, no bitterness, just forward movement. Because here's what I learned. The loudest betrayal isn't always the most dangerous. It's the quiet manipulation, the paperwork, the signatures. But if you pay attention, you can outlast it. As for Vivian, she moved to another state. Rumor says she's consulting again, but she'll never control what my father built. And I don't hate her. Hate keeps you tied to the past. I'm too busy building the future. Last week, I walked through a finished home in our newest development. Sunlight pouring through windows, fresh paint, hardwood floors shining. I imagined a family moving in, kids running down hallways. That's what this was always about. Not revenge, legacy. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. You can try to rewrite someone's story. You can try to push them out of their own inheritance. But if they understand the foundation, they don't collapse. They rebuild stronger. My name is Elena Cruz. I'm 29 years old, and no one will ever quietly take what my father built again.